Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we are running an absolute masterclass on the ultimate real estate rulebook for 2026. The Australian property market, it's undergoing a literal seismic shift right now. If you want to protect your portfolio and, let's be honest, stay miles ahead of the curve, you need to understand exactly what is happening beneath the surface. Let's get into it. Are we facing the sharpest correction in years? Take a deep breath. Let the gravity of that truly sink in. Clearance rates just hit a 6-year low. Guys, more than half of Australian homes up for auction right now are failing to sell. The ground is fundamentally shifting beneath our feet, and those old ways of doing things, they're rapidly becoming obsolete. So here's our game plan to help you navigate this chaos and actually find the opportunities. We're covering 5 key areas. 1. The Great Property Reset. 2. Rates, shocks, and costs. 3. The new tax rules. 4. Exemptions and new builds. And finally, 5. Forecasts for the future. All right, Section 1, the Great Property Reset. We have to start right here by confronting the brutal reality the market is facing right now. 4.35%. Just let that number land for a second. The Reserve Bank of Australia held the official cash rate exactly here in June. And the pain? It is absolutely real for mortgage holders all across the country. Following those consecutive rate rises to combat inflation, so many homeowners are now facing massively higher repayments than they were just a few months ago. And the RBA? Well, they've made it crystal clear that further hikes are definitely still on the table. Moving on to Section 2, rates, shocks, and costs. You know, it's never just one single thing that tips a market. It is the compounding weight of several forces colliding all at once. Right now, we're dealing with persistent underlying inflation and a highly restricted domestic labor market. But hey, it's not just local policy, right? We are facing a major global energy shock triggered by conflict in the Middle East. And what does that do? That pushes up freight and petrochemical costs globally, which then flows directly into our domestic construction. To put that into perspective, plumbing and trade supplies surged an incredible 11% in just 2 months, April and May. The market is literally being squeezed from all sides. And because of this massive squeeze, consumer sentiment is absolutely crashing. Economists are calling this a material air pocket in the housing market. Between all this tax uncertainty and the compounding economic shocks we just talked about, we're tracking toward a massive 20% drop in dwelling turnover. Buyers are simply pulling back. They're looking at the board and they're choosing to wait. Which brings us to Section 3, the new tax rules. So what actually happens if the rules of the game change overnight? Let's break down these historic federal budget tax reforms, because honestly, this is the true catalyst for this entire reset. We are completely moving away from the old rules. Since 1999, investors enjoyed a flat 50% capital gains tax discount, plus wide-open negative gearing on pretty much all properties. Well, the new rules completely rewrite that formula. They introduce CPI cost-based indexation paired with a 30% minimum tax on capital gains. And negative gearing? By July 2027, it is going to be strictly limited to new builds only. It's a whole new ballgame. Get a load of this. Only 4.5% of Australians now nominate real estate as the wisest place for savings. Just let that stark statistic hang in the air for a second. 4.5%. Historically, that number averaged 24%. Risk aversion has reached absolute extreme highs, and investors are genuinely retreating to the sidelines. Listen, there is a very clear and stated objective behind all this disruption. As the federal budget itself explains, these changes are designed to level the playing field for first-home buyers, preserve the gains investors have already made, and support investment in new housing supply. The ultimate goal here? It's to reverse decades of declining home ownership among younger demographics. In fact, Treasury modeling suggests these reforms will add 75,000 new owner-occupiers over the next decade. They are fundamentally resetting the board to favor the homebuyer over the investor in the established market. Okay, Section 4, exemptions and new builds. Now, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by all these changes right now, take a breath, because right here is where we reveal the strategic loopholes. Look, every new rulebook has exemptions. First up, grandfathering. If you're an existing investor, your current assets are actually largely protected. Any properties held before 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on May 12, 2026 will retain their negative gearing privileges and that classic 50% CGT discount. So what does this mean? It creates a powerful, undeniable incentive to hold on to exactly what you already have. The government is essentially locking in existing portfolios. And this creates the ultimate strategy moving forward. The new build carve-out, this is your golden ticket. It's a simple three-step process. Step 1, purchase a newly constructed dwelling. Step 2, because it's a new build, you can still deduct those rental losses against your taxable income. And step 3, when you eventually go to sell, you actually get to choose between the 50% CGT discount or CPI indexation. This is exactly where future investor capital is being strategically redirected right now. All right, final stretch. Section 5, forecast for the future. We've mastered the new rules, we've analyzed the shocks, so what exactly does the horizon look like for your capital? Well, despite all the turbulence and a projected 34% fall in new investor activity, the major banks are still forecasting significant growth in targeted markets. Just look at Brisbane, for example. CBA forecasts a massive 12% growth. ANZ is looking at 9.7%, with Westpac and NAB following right suit. The underlying demand fundamentals, which are driven by rapid population growth and chronic undersupply, mean that these resilient markets, they're still going to push upward. So the big takeaway here is that while the broader market will likely flatten out nationally, and yes, Sydney and Melbourne are currently bearing the brunt of those immediate price corrections, we are entering a whole new era of real estate dynamics. You should expect an increase in landlordism as investors build internal portfolios that they can negatively gear against other property income. Also, expect a gradual firming of gross rental yields by about half a percentage point as the market equalizes those investor returns. And finally, expect much longer rental holding periods, which is going to fundamentally reshape the entire rental landscape. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. When the dust finally settles on this great property reset, will you be a spectator or will you rise? The rules of wealth creation in Australian property have fundamentally changed. The costs have completely shifted. But the blueprint for success? It is right there in front of you. You need to master these new rules. Target the exemptions. Position yourself strategically. The opportunities are absolutely still out there for those who are ready to act.